If you grew up in the 2000s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The Disney Channel wasn't just something you flipped to. It was, well, it was everything. It was the soundtrack to your homework, the posters on your wall, and the home of stars that honestly felt like they were your actual friends. Seriously, we grew up right alongside them. We watched them deal with crushes and school and friendships on screen, and it felt so real. It was almost like we were all part of this one big, magical, shared childhood. But as we got older, something started to feel a little off. The cracks in that perfect, shiny facade began to show. You'd see the squeaky clean personas start to unravel, and it made you wonder, what was really going on behind the magic? What was the real price for all that fame? To really get it, you have to understand the system. See, Disney didn't just stumble upon these stars, it built them. They created and perfected this incredible process, like a full-on assembly line for churning out global superstars. And it all started with a very, very specific formula. When you actually break it down, you see just how much of a machine it was. It was a four-step pipeline. Step 1, find the talent through these massive nationwide casting calls. Step 2, train them like you wouldn't believe. Step 3, launch their show with an insane amount of hype. And step 4, expand their brand across music, movies, merchandise, you name it. This wasn't just about making TV shows, it was a well-oiled machine designed for maximum profit. And just think about who they were looking for, not just kids who could act. They needed triple threats, kids who could act, sing, and dance. But more importantly, they had to be young and, moldable. Miley Cyrus was only 11 when she got cast as Hannah Montana. Selena Gomez was just 10. For these kids, the Disney set wasn't just a job. It was their entire world during their most formative years. Okay, so once you were inside the machine, that dream life, well, it came with a pretty hefty price tag. Signing that Disney contract basically meant signing over huge parts of your life. The whole goal was to freeze these kids in time, to keep them that innocent, family-friendly product for as long as possible. The amount of control they had was just absolute. Stars had to take a course called Disney 101 for media training. Every single tweet or post needed pre-approval. There were strict dress codes even when they weren't working. And get this, in some cases, like with Miley Cyrus, Disney literally owned her birth name, her actual name. Just listen to this story from Bella Thorne. A picture of her wearing a bikini at the beach started making the rounds online. She says Disney called her up and the message was clear. Next time, you need to wear boy shorts and a baggy t-shirt. She was 14. That's the kind of insane pressure they were under to maintain this totally manufactured image of purity. And on top of all that personal pressure, the work itself was just grueling. To hit their deadlines, these child actors would sometimes be on set for up to 14 hours a day. Let that sink in. 14 hours. That's an exhausting schedule for a grown adult, let alone a kid. You'd think the paycheck would make it all worth it, right? Nope. Miley Cyrus has said that even though Hannah Montana was making millions upon millions, she was locked into the same flat rate she signed on for at the very beginning. Once that contract was signed, that was it. She saw no extra cuts from the insane profits her image was generating for the company. So on camera, Disney was selling this idea of one big, happy family. But behind the scenes, as these kids started growing into teenagers, the company actually began to manipulate their personal lives to keep the machine running, and that created some very, very real drama. This was the peak of what people call purity culture. Publicly, it was all about purity rings and being perfect role models. But privately, there was intense competition. Everyone wanted to be the network's golden child. And here's where it gets really weird. While they were pushing this family image, Disney was also reportedly encouraging its stars to date each other. This led to those famous love triangles, like the whole Miley, Selena, and Nick Jonas drama that was all over the magazines. But nothing, and I mean nothing, exposed the dark side of this purity culture more than what happened to Vanessa Hudgens. In 2006, she was on top of the world. High School Musical was a global sensation. But then, it all came crashing down. So, right before the second movie was about to come out, private photos of an 18-year-old Vanessa were leaked online. The backlash was immediate, and it was vicious. She was forced to make a public apology as if she was the one who did something wrong, and then Disney put out a statement calling it a lapse in judgment, basically cementing the idea that she was the one to blame. The media was relentless and just cruel. This quote you see here from a TV host is just a tiny taste of the public shaming she had to endure. Instead of being treated like the victim of a crime, a major privacy violation, she was treated like damaged goods. And that whole scandal became a scary lesson that Disney used to tighten its grip even more on its other young stars. So, when you understand that level of control, that insane pressure, and that public scrutiny, it's really not surprising that for so many of these stars, leaving the Disney bubble led to a really turbulent and very public fallout. The damage from those years was real. You just have to look at the tragic story of Demi Lovato. A showrunner actually warned Disney about their mental health early on, but those concerns were apparently just dismissed. That pressure cook environment only made their struggles with eating disorders and substance abuse worse, and it all came to a head in 2010. That led to their first time in rehab and the start of a long, difficult, and very public battle with addiction. This also gives you a whole new way of looking at one of the biggest pop culture moments of that era. You know, when Miley Cyrus completely shed her Disney image with the Wrecking Ball video and that VMA performance, it wasn't just some random act of rebellion. It was a desperate and honestly a necessary escape. It was her reclaiming an identity that a corporation had controlled since she was 11. But Disney is a revolving door, right? As one group of stars gets older, a new one is always waiting in the wings. So the big question is, has anything actually changed for this new generation, for stars like Olivia Rodrigo and Sabrina Carpenter? Well, it really seems like there has been a major shift. I mean, Olivia Rodrigo released an album with some pretty edgy lyrics while she was still on her Disney show, and Sabrina Carpenter's move into pop music with more suggestive themes has been celebrated, not condemned. It kind of suggests that both Disney and, well, all of us have maybe finally loosened the reins a bit. And we are seeing some really positive steps. Society is definitely more accepting. Former stars like Alison Stoner have become these powerful advocates, fighting for better protections, like having mental health professionals on every single set. But some huge issues are still there. A lot of these kids become the main source of income for their entire family, and that adds a whole different layer of pressure that's almost impossible to imagine. Which really leaves us with this final critical question. The magic that Disney created gave us a generation of icons, and it literally shaped our childhoods. But the stories from behind the curtain show a huge cost, one paid in lost youth, in fractured identities, and in lifelong mental health battles. It's a powerful reminder that behind every child star, there is a child who deserves to be protected, not just produced.